Hi. Today I wanted to film a wrap-up video for the books that I've read in April, which was surprisingly a very productive month. I read a lot. I don't know what happened. I think it was Ninth House. I think she put me in a reading slump, just because Ninth House is one of those books that starts out very slowly and just kind of drags on until you're like 100 pages in, and then it starts picking up. I love Ninth House. It's one of my favorite books of all time, but boy did that rereading that one cost me. So ever since I finished Ninth House in February, I think it was in March that I finished her. So ever since rereading Ninth House, I've been having a better month, just because I've been reading books that are shorter and also by authors that I know are easy to read. So I think that's why I'm doing so well. Also because a lot of the books that I read aren't actually books, they're manga and graphic novels, so obviously those go a lot faster and you get them done very quickly. So let's get into it. The first things I've finished in April are volumes 4, 5, and 6 of Moriarty the Patriot. I already talked about these in other videos, and I still love them. They're all always 5 stars. They're always very cool, very fun. So yeah, I can't wait to continue reading because I have watched the anime, but what I also realized that a lot of the scenes and like chapters that are in the manga aren't in the anime. So it is refreshing that it's not all the same exactly. So it's always a little bit like a couple of new scenes, and like a lot of the scenes that are in here aren't in the series, like I said. And also I think the manga goes further than the anime. So if I finish, how far am I? I have all 50 mangas that are published in French so far. I think there's more in French, but I couldn't find them when I went on my trip to my monthly book shopping spree that I haven't done in a while, so that's good. But yeah, so until I finish those, I'm still on track with what's in the anime. I have rewatched the anime now about 20 times. I just press rewind as soon as I finish it. It's so much fun. If you don't know what Moriarty the Patriot is about, it's a manga that is kind of a retelling of the villain in the original Sherlock Holmes stories, Moriarty, where in this he's not really like a villain, he's more like an anti-hero, and you kind of follow him as he tries to righten the wrongs of society and, you know, just be the anti-hero that he is. And I really love this version of the original Sherlock Holmes stories just because it's different from what we've seen so far, because all of the adaptations, whether it's in books or movies or TV shows, it has never been the exact same feeling as the original stories have. I haven't fully read the original Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm planning on doing that just because I want to see all the little details that they put in this. Just because I have noticed from the things that I do know from the original stories, they have actually put them in here as well, which is really fun. Also, there's a lot of aspects of particularly Sherlock Holmes that I have never seen in any other adaptations, whether it's movie or TV show of Sherlock, that they did include in this. And it's really fun and it's really nice. And I highly recommend this to anybody, even if you don't know much about Sherlock Holmes and all of that. If you're not really familiar with the stories, I highly recommend this series just because it's very fun. I always recommend this as Death Note meets Black Butler, and then you have this series. Just mix up the original Sherlock Holmes stories, Black Butler, and Death Note together, and you have this. So do with that what you will. The next book I finished in April is The Sunbury Trials by Aidan Thomas. I finished this early into the month because I started it late March. I read this thinking it was a standalone, and then when I get to the end it says to be continued, and apparently the sequel has been, it shows on Goodreads that there is a sequel, but there is no title yet, there is no cover, and there is no date of when it's coming out. So I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. I should really start looking further into like the books I want to read to see if it is a standalone or not. Just because, I mean, I read Cemetery Boys, and I know that Lost in the Neverwoods are both standalones. So I was like, okay, then this one's probably also a standalone. No, it's not. And especially the plot twist at the end of this had me wanting to pick up the sequel immediately. And I didn't have it, so I guess I'll just go sleep on it, I guess. If you don't know what December Trials is about, it's kind of like a mix of, well, it is pitched as The Hunger Games meets Percy Jackson. That's a pretty good summary of it, even though I have only recently watched The Hunger Games and I've never watched nor read Percy Jackson. I get the gist of it. I've watched the first movie, which is probably not my best introduction to to that story. Kind of know what it's about just because I've heard so much about it, and this pretty much sums it up very well. There's a trans main character, which is the usual with Aiden Thomas, and it has really cool representation in it, and also and it's a lot of fun. It's very funny, it's very YA, but the comedy is really funny. It had me laughing more than once, and it's just a fun time. I highly recommend any of his books. I have heard mixed reviews of Lost in the Neverwoods, but I haven't read it yet, so we'll see how that one goes. But so far, the 2 books that I've read of Aiden Thomas are really fun, and I highly recommend both. The next book I have finished in April is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. I was putting off reading that book specifically, just because I know that the 3rd book comes out in October, and I thought it was just a duology until the 2nd book came out, and then there was talk about the 3rd book, and I was like, very well. So yeah, I didn't, like, I could have bought this book physically. I do own it physically, but the paperback that I have doesn't match the one that I already own, which is the smaller UK paperback. And this paperback only comes out in October as well, I think, around the same time as the 3rd book comes out. And then when the 3rd book's smaller paperback comes out, it'll probably be next October as well, or like next year, in just somewhere at the end of next year, just because that's my kind of luck. So yeah, I just really had to pick this paperback specifically to start that collection, didn't I? I don't regret it because I have all the covers. This one's by far my favorite, and also I've seen the cover of the matching paperback of this one for The Ballad of Never After, and I really love it. So I'm not mad, but I am. Also, I don't know if you could tell, but I did find these like little pink apples that reminded me of like Evangeline and Jax, just because the motherfucker always have apples on him, and in The Ballad of Never After they made it clear that those mean something. Like they have a purpose as to why he always has an apple and why he's always eating apples, but you don't get the answer in the Ballad of Never After. So now I also have to wait to know why this bitch has apples all the time until the 3rd book, and I cannot. I love The Ballad of Never After. Stephanie Garber is now one of my absolute favorite authors, just because I love her writing. I love her world building. I love the way she just builds up her story, because when she writes, around past the halfway point of the book, the plot twists start rolling in, and when they start coming, they don't stop. And don't make the same mistake that I did for all of her books, which is Once Upon a Broken Heart, Ballad of Never After, and also Caraval, which I also read this month. Yeah, don't read the 2nd half at night, because you will be pulling an all-nighter. I pulled 3 all-nighters reading all 3 of those books. I pulled 2 all-nighters this month. More, just because that's my thing apparently. I should know by now that if I read at night and it starts getting interesting, I should just stop and read it in the morning. But no, I never listened to my past self. I'm saying this now, but just watch. When I read Legendary and Finale, it's gonna be the same fucking story. I'm gonna be sitting down here, looking into the camera and saying, I pulled another all-nighter reading Stephanie Garber. It's never going to change. If you don't know what The Ballad of Never After is, it's the sequel to Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is a sequel series to the Caraval series by the same author. It follows Evangeline Fox, who is kind of like this fairy tale obsessed little girl, teenager, and one day after she finds out that her true love is engaged to another, she goes to find Jax, the Prince of Hearts, one of the Fates, and she strikes a deal with him, but very quickly she realizes that that was a mistake, and everything that Jax says might not be entirely true, it might not entirely be in her best interest, and he has ulterior motives to everything that is going on, and she quickly comes to feel like she's more part of his game than he's a part of hers. And it just goes on like that. In The Ballad of Never After, there's a lot more romance. There's a lot more tension between the two. Obviously in Once Upon a Broken Heart there's already a little bit of tension between the two, like you can tell that those two are gonna end up together, but there's always the looming thing, like you want them to end up together, but then you know that like there's this looming possibility of them not ending up together just because of Jax's whole thing where his curse is kind of like where his kiss is deadly to everyone but his true love, and he already found his true love, but she stabbed him in the heart, and so now he doesn't think anyone else is his true love. But then you kind of get like the other, you know, like basic fantasy thing where like, oh no, they're actually going to end up together in the curse, and like the whole true love thing is kind of flipped on its head because you know they're gonna end up together, but there's this looming thing of true love kiss going around as you only have one true love. But then this story kind of says the opposite, that like you have multiple true loves and like it doesn't like just fit with one person, because I mean that I would have just stopped reading at that point. But even with that, you like the story tells you that you have a true love, but that's not the end there. Like it doesn't end there. That doesn't mean you have to end up with them, otherwise you're never going to be happy. That's not what it tells you, which I like. It's kind of like taking the soulmate trope, which I hate, and kind of flipping it on its head, and I adore it. And so you kind of see them falling in love with each other, but beware of Stephanie Garber. Because I say all of that, but at the same time I'm like, what she's done in the Ballad of Never After makes me want to have the third book right away, just because I need to know. I'm on the edge of my seat until I have the book in my hands. I filmed my reaction to the ending of the Ballad of Never After, which I will include at the end of this video, just because I was filming that at like 4 a.m. in the morning. I am sleep deprived because I spent 2 all-nighters in a row reading this book, and I'm finishing it, and you can just tell that I'm out of it, and the plot twists keep coming and they don't stop. So yeah, that's really fun. The next book I read in April, which I actually finished on the 1st of May because I pulled an all-nighter finishing this bitch, is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I read this very quickly. That's also another thing I really want to like point out about Stephanie Garber. Her books are fast-paced. Like this is a chunker. Like she's not thin, but she reads so fast. And it's like I said, once you're past the halfway point, you kind of can't stop because the plot twists keep rolling in, and you stand there wanting more. Once you finish it, you want to read the sequel immediately, which I don't recommend reading her books while you only have like the first one or the 2 first ones at hand, or if like you read the beginning of a series but the sequel hasn't come out. I would suggest you wait to read those books if you're one of those people that if an ending is good and you want a sequel immediately, you're not going to be able to sleep. Wait, don't read it immediately, wait. Because I made that mistake. I started reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, it ended, the sequel isn't out yet for another week, and then I bought it, I read the sequel. The 3rd book isn't out until October. Now luckily with Caraval the 3 books are already out, and I bought them all at once because that's just how I am, and I'm happy I did, because now I can read them back to back, which is again something I never do. I usually take a break in between series. Like I read the 1st book, and then usually in typical Chloe fashion I read the sequel a year later, just because I started other books, I started a series, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna read something else in between. I read another series, and that's just how it goes. With Caraval, I can't do that. I just can't. Like I just have to read all 3 of the books as if they're one. Like Stephanie Garber could have put Caraval, Legendary, and Finale all in one book, and I would have been happy. I would have read that bitch, like no questions asked. I wouldn't even complain. Now if you've never heard of Caraval, or if you've never read it, it follows Scarlet and her sister who has been kidnapped by a Caraval master to be part of a game. But as you follow her trying to save her sister, like solving mysteries, because I want to give Stephanie Garber the biggest hug I can give her with my tiny ass body, because she added a mystery element to it, and you know how much I love a mystery element. You can literally give me the most boring ass plot, but as soon as you throw a good mystery in there, I will love it. Now she's took it a step further because it says, remember, it's only a game. Then the blurb says, welcome to Caraval. Beware of getting swept too far away. Which, that warning, yes, it is all just a game. Yes, like I knew that. I was like, okay, what if this isn't real? Then something tells me it isn't. And then it tells me even that wasn't real. Nothing is real. Even the things that they tell you isn't real, them telling you it's not real was not real either. It's a mind fuck, and I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, in Legendary, you follow Scarlet's sister, Donatella, with another little mystery from the get-go, because you don't know anything. You think you know anything going into this? You don't, because I went into this knowing the ending between Jax and Donatella, because obviously I read Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I know how their story ends. I thought, okay, I got this, I know how this is gonna go. Also, Caraval is one of those books where, like, I've heard so much things about it, I kind of got the gist of what it was about, just because it's one of those popular books. I've been bamboozled. Like, Stephanie Garber is really making me eat my words, because I always say I can sniff out any plot twist from a mile away, just because I have this, like, very, you know, like, figuratively form of thinking. So when there is a mystery aspect to it, or like there is like a question in the book as what is this or who did that and this whole thing, I can just predict it, and I'm always right, usually right to a certain extent. But with this, clown, that's clown shit. So yeah, I cannot say that about myself anymore, just because of Stephanie Garber. And now she is absolutely my favorite author right now. I adore her so much, and I want her to be my friend. And I want her to stop hurting me, but I also don't want her to stop just because it's so fucking good. Now, another thing about Caraval that I absolutely adored, this is more of a personal thing, just because no one told me that the main character had synesthesia. No one told me. If you don't know what synesthesia is, it's kind of like, it can differ from person to person. I think everyone has a little bit of synesthesia, but like some people have it more, which is essentially where, for example, someone when they eat like chocolate, they can taste a color, like they see a color with the taste, like with the sound. You can see color, or with emotions you can see color, or like you can taste shapes. You can, you know, anything, like recognize a color or a shape through other senses. It's kind of like this thing in your brain that overlaps with, like, between senses. And I have that. I have that with like people, emotions, and sounds, specifically music. Like I can hear colors with a song. Like I can associate colors to a song specifically, or like an album in particular. Scarlet Dragna has the same shit, and when I cried when I realized that she had synesthesia, because at first I was like, okay, maybe it's just Stephanie Garber's way of describing a scene, or like, you know, a specific emotion, whatever, because I had seen authors, you know, describing things dramatically with like colors and like what the color makes them feel, and it's like very extra, and most of the time it's wrong, so like from what I see. But then the main character herself says it herself, that ever since she was little, she could always associate her feelings with colors. Like she saw colors with the emotions that she felt. When I read that, my heart stopped. It stopped. And then I started paying more attention to what exactly she was describing, like which emotion or like whatever she was describing, and associate a color to. And a lot of it were the same colors that I associate to those things. And my jaw dropped, because I was like, I don't know if Stephanie Garber herself has synesthesia or she did research about this, but that is something very specific to add to a character, and I absolutely adore it. Like, I'm about to cry again. Hold on. Stop. No, because there is one specific thing that I like. Obviously, synesthesia is different for everybody. Not everyone's going to see the same colors. Not everyone's going to like hear or taste the same colors. It can be very different for different people. Like, for example, I don't see the same colors as the character describes it. How, like, for example, she described grief as gray, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think it was like gray or something. And I was like, no, that's not what I see. I see like grief as like a washed out red with spikes, because I also see shapes but along with the colors. I can maybe make a video more in depth in that, but like I have never really talked about that to anybody except for like my mom, my grandpa, and my friends. Those are the only people I ever talked. I once told that to someone at school and they kind of like looked at me weirdly and like they kind of bullied me with it a little bit for a while, so I just never told anybody about it. When I told my mom, she was amazed. My best friend, who's very like spiritual, into like witchy stuff, she was eating the shit up when I was freaking out about this book. She was just enjoying it. So yeah, I might make a video about that, talking about it. But I was very happy to see this in this book, because obviously from it's even in the first line, the second chapter, when the book really starts. Hold on. Let me find it right here. Scarlet's feelings came in colors even brighter than usual. The urgent red of burning coals, the eager green of new grass buds, the frenzied yellow of a flapping bird's feathers. Like, that's very specific. And at first I thought, okay, it's just an extra way to describe a feeling of happiness. But then I realized it's similar to how I associate the feelings, like with the colors. Like, that's the only way I can really identify what I'm feeling exactly, is through the colors. But even sometimes I get it wrong. That is one thing that I never thought I needed to see represented. I'm gonna cry. That is one thing I never thought I like needed to see in a book. So yeah, now the sequel is with Donatella's POV, so I'm not gonna see that anymore, but I'm just happy to know that this exists. And just because also it's mixed up with all my favorite tropes, and like it's just a book that I loved so much. I'm crying. I didn't think I was going to cry talking about it, but it's just I just never saw this in any book, like specifically a character that had synesthesia, especially so similar to mine. Fuck. So yeah, I'm just going to add this book to the pile that if you've read this and like you know these characters, you understand me more than my own fucking family. I need to stop. Oh my god. Then the final book that I read in April is a graphic novel, which is The Sad Ghost Club. Yeah. I read this as like kind of part of a book club with my friends, which is kind of like the graphic novel was first from one friend, she passed it to another, then to another, and then it was finally passed on to me. And I read it, and apparently there are sequels. I'm also going to read those. So it was really fun. It was really cute, just because it's also one thing that I'm going to add to the pile of like, if you read this, you know me more than my family, just because it was so close. It hit so close with like the like kind of feeling left out and being like socially awkward and all of that. And it was really cute. Also, it was really fun to see that the main character, like the little ghosts that I'll follow, every single time there's a ghost, they're non-binary, like they don't have a gender. So it's really easy for anybody to associate with it, no matter who you are, like what gender you identify as. It's really just about, you know, just a sad ghost, a sad lonely ghost who's anxious to go to a party. You're gonna be my emotional support animal again? So yeah, that too had me crying more than once, just because I don't know why, whenever I find something that I relate to on like, you know, on stuff that bother me a lot socially, and just in general, like the fact that I'm socially awkward, that I don't really like fit in, or like don't know how to fit in and all of that. Yeah, that's all in there. I'm part of the Sad Ghost Club. These are all of the books that I read this month. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm sorry for crying on camera, first of all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am very happy with this month's, like the amount of books that I read this month. Also, I hate the fact that I cried so much this month. I think I even cried while reading the Sunbearer Trials. So yeah, I hope you guys like this video. Like and subscribe. I will link down below my Etsy shop where I sell stickers, bookmarks, and prints of my own fan art and regular art. Also link down below my Instagram, which is where I post the most. I post a lot of reading updates and just overall my wrap-ups, the picture, you know, that I make all pretty witty. And now you can just watch my reaction to the ending of the Ballad of Never After. I wish I could film could have filmed my reaction to like the second half of Caraval, because I had a lot of similar reactions but unfortunately I couldn't just because my grandpa was there, and yeah, he was asleep. Obviously, because I finished reading at like 4 a.m. again. Anyway, enjoy.